Danny Harris came home to find his neighbor, Karen Wilson from the HOA, brazenly parked across his driveway, ignoring his property rights. Karen, with her entitled attitude and strict adherence to the rules, seemed determined to make him feel powerless. But Danny had a secret weapon, his careful preparation and undeniable proof of ownership that would completely change the game. And just wait until you see how this confrontation unfolded and why justice in the end triumphantly took its place. I, Danny Harris, never imagined that a quiet suburban street, lined with neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences, could feel like a battlefield. That afternoon, the sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows across my driveway as I pulled into my neighborhood. I was tired from a long day at work, looking forward to the simple comfort of home, maybe a cup of coffee, my favorite chair, and a quiet evening. But the moment I turned into my street, I froze. There, occupying the entirety of my driveway, was my neighbor, Karen Wilson. Karen was known in the neighborhood as the self-appointed guardian of rules and regulations, a member of the HOA who seemed to have an unshakable belief that her interpretation of the rules outweighed common sense. She was sitting in her car, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, the fact that she was blocking my access. I stepped out of my car, my stomach twisting with irritation. "Karen," I began, keeping my voice as calm as I could, "you're parked in my driveway. Can you please move your car?" Her head lifted lazily, eyes narrowing as she studied me. There was a smugness in her expression that immediately made my blood boil. "Oh, Danny," she said, her tone dripping with confidence. "I can park wherever I want. That's allowed according to the rules." I stared at her, disbelief rooting me to the spot, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. How could anyone believe their interpretation of some association's rules could override another person's basic property rights? The audacity was staggering. I felt an immediate surge of anger, not the kind that passes quickly, but the slow, simmering kind that makes every small injustice feel like a personal affront. It wasn't just about the driveway. It was the principle. It was the sense of being disrespected in the place I called home. Every inch of that asphalt, every corner of that small plot of land belonged to me. And yet here was Karen sitting smugly in her car as if she had every right to intrude on my life, to disregard my ownership, to claim authority she had never truly earned. I could feel my pulse quicken. Thoughts raced through my mind. How long would she stay? What if someone else saw this and thought it was acceptable? Would my other neighbors support me or just roll their eyes, used to Karen's domineering presence? Every second she remained there felt like an insult, each one amplifying the injustice. I took a deep breath, trying to channel the anger into clarity. I reminded myself that this wasn't about losing control or causing a scene. It was about standing up for myself, for the rights that were legally and morally mine. But the fire inside me refused to cool. The sheer nerve, the disrespect, the entitlement, it was infuriating. As I stood there, glaring at the car that had become a symbol of audacity, I realized that this was more than a minor neighborly dispute. This was a test, a challenge that demanded I confront not only Karen, but the broader idea that some people think rules exist to serve their whims rather than justice. And in that moment, I knew this was the beginning of a fight I wasn't willing to lose. When I told Karen firmly that I wouldn't allow her to stay parked in my driveway, she didn't argue. Instead, she immediately reached for her phone and dialed the police. My stomach sank the moment I saw her doing it. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was humiliation, a feeling that wrapped itself tightly around my chest and made every breath feel heavier. I had always thought of my neighborhood as a place of calm and civility, a place where neighbors respected each other's boundaries. Now, standing there with Karen smirking from the driver's seat, that illusion shattered. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived, their presence calm but authoritative. I stepped forward, holding my property documents in my hands, ready to explain the situation. But before I could speak, Karen leaned out of her window and insisted, in that same confident, self-assured tone, "This is public property. He doesn't own this driveway." I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. It was as if the entire world had turned against me for a moment. My own neighbor challenging what was rightfully mine, and the police now needing proof, turning the confrontation into a legal question rather than a simple neighborly resolution. The officers asked politely, "Do you have any documents showing this is your property?" My hands shook slightly as I fumbled to retrieve them. In that instant, every second I had spent building my life, buying and maintaining this house, all the effort I had put into making this place my home, felt at risk of being dismissed. I could feel the sting of helplessness piercing through me. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a violation, a stripping away of the sense of security I had always taken for granted. I looked at Karen, her expression unchanged, and felt a sharp pain in my chest. This was more than frustration. It was the weight of injustice pressing down on me. Here was someone who, day after day, acted as if the world revolved around her whims, ignoring the impact her actions had on everyone else. And yet, in this moment, she held a kind of power over me, simply because she refused to acknowledge the truth without external validation. Every time she said something like, "I can do what I want," it dug deeper into that pain, a reminder that entitlement can be blinding, cruel, and exhausting to confront. I felt an almost physical ache as neighbors began to peek from their windows, whispering among themselves. Some offered sympathetic glances, but others seemed to shrug, as if these kinds of disputes were normal, even acceptable. Each indifferent look, each dismissive murmur, added another layer to the sense of helplessness. I realized then how isolating it can feel when your rights are challenged, not just by one person, but by the uncertainty of how others perceive the situation. Standing there, documents in hand, I was caught between the desire to explode with anger and the need to remain calm and rational. The emotional weight pressed on me, a mix of humiliation, anxiety, and frustration. I understood that this moment would either define how I reacted to injustice or let it define me. And yet, amidst the pain, a quiet determination began to grow. A spark that suggested this confrontation would not end without resolution, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it might be. Despite the humiliation and frustration I had just endured, I knew I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't let Karen's sense of entitlement dictate what happened on my own property. My hands shook slightly, not from fear but from determination, as I retrieved my folder of property documents from the glove compartment. Each paper was meticulously organized. The deed, the tax records, and the official cadastral map showing the exact boundaries of my property. I had spent years maintaining this home, and now all of that history and effort were represented in these sheets of paper. They were more than documents. They were my proof, my shield, and my hope. I took a deep breath and approached the officers as they arrived, each step feeling heavier than the last, but also steadier. My mind raced through the possible outcomes, but I reminded myself that facts and preparation were on my side. I explained clearly and calmly, without raising my voice, that Karen was parked directly on my property. I handed over the documents, pointing out the boundary lines and the precise measurements that left no room for debate. At first, Karen tried to argue, waving her hands and insisting that the driveway was shared or somehow public. Her voice was loud, trying to assert authority, but the calm professionalism of the officers and the clear evidence in my hands made her words meaningless. I could see the confidence in her expression faltering, and I felt a small spark of hope ignite. For the first time in this encounter, I sensed a shift toward fairness, toward recognition of what was right. The officers studied the documents, nodding politely as they confirmed the boundaries. Then, turning to Karen, they asked her firmly but courteously to move her car. There was a moment of hesitation, as if she was deciding whether to comply or push further, but ultimately she started her engine, giving me a glance that was equal parts annoyance and resignation, and drove off my driveway. I exhaled deeply, feeling the tension in my shoulders release in a wave of relief and satisfaction. That moment of victory was incredible. It wasn't just about the car moving. It was about standing up for myself, asserting my rights, and proving that preparation, calmness, and persistence could overcome entitlement and arrogance. I felt a surge of triumph wash over me, a combination of pride, validation, and emotional relief. I had faced a situation that could have easily escalated into conflict or left me feeling powerless, yet I had navigated it successfully. Neighbors peeked out of their windows, some offering smiles or quiet nods of acknowledgement. I realized that this victory extended beyond me. It was a reminder to everyone around that standing up for what is right matters, that facts and fairness will eventually prevail. I felt a deep sense of empowerment, knowing that my voice and actions had restored a sense of justice on my street. Walking back into my house, I couldn't stop smiling. The sense of triumph was tangible, a glowing warmth that replaced the tension and pain of the past hour. I had defended my boundaries, upheld my property rights, and proven to myself that calm determination and preparation could turn a difficult, stressful encounter into a personal victory. In that moment, hope had turned into reality, and the feeling of justice served left me with a confidence I would carry with me long after the driveway was clear. After the incident with Karen, the story of Danny and HOA Karen seemed to spread throughout the neighborhood almost immediately. Conversations hummed along the sidewalks, over fences, and across emails and neighborhood chat groups. People were curious, some sympathetic, others amused by the audacity of it all. But for me, it wasn't just gossip. It was a reminder of the lesson I had learned, the kind that settles deep into your mind and changes the way you approach challenges. Standing up to Karen had been intimidating. From the moment she first parked on my driveway, I had felt that creeping tension, the uncertainty of how the situation would unfold, and the weight of potential humiliation. And yet, in spite of the fear and discomfort, I had acted decisively. I realized that this experience was about more than a driveway or a stubborn neighbor. It was about asserting boundaries, claiming your rights, and having the courage to defend them calmly and logically. I began to reflect on that day often. The clarity and composure I had summoned in front of the officers were not just tools. They were a testament to preparation and restraint. I understood something fundamental. Strength isn't always about confrontation or aggression. True strength lies in knowing your rights, understanding your position, and acting with intelligence and dignity. Karen had tried to dominate the situation with her attitude and entitlement, but calmness and evidence had won the day. That truth stayed with me, becoming almost a mantra whenever I face challenges, big or small. Every time I walk past my driveway now, I can't help but think back to that afternoon. The asphalt that once felt like a battlefield now feels like a symbol of empowerment. It reminds me that standing up for yourself isn't simply a matter of self-interest. It's a statement of integrity. It's about refusing to let unfairness define the space you inhabit, the way you live, or the rules you choose to honor. I feel a quiet pride when I see that clear driveway, knowing that this small victory reinforced a deeper lesson about fairness and perseverance. Beyond my own reflection, I noticed how the experience subtly influenced others in the neighborhood. People became more conscious of boundaries, more respectful of each other's spaces, and perhaps a little more willing to consider fairness over entitlement. It was inspiring to realize that one act of standing up for what is right, done with patience and evidence, could ripple outward in unexpected ways. I had become, without intending it, an example of the power of calm assertion and reasoned action. Ultimately, the incident with Karen left me with a renewed sense of confidence and perspective. Life is full of moments where standing your ground is uncomfortable or even frightening, but the rewards, clarity, respect, and justice are worth the effort. That driveway, once a point of conflict, now represents resilience, courage, and the idea that justice is achievable when approached thoughtfully. I learned that protecting what is yours, whether it's a driveway, your voice, or your principles, requires courage, preparation, and self-belief. And so, every glance at that driveway is more than a reminder of a neighborly dispute. It's a reminder that standing up for yourself is not just a right, but a strength. It is a quiet inspiration, a lesson etched in the daily life of the street I call home, and a story I carry with me as a measure of what is possible when integrity meets determination.